Hello and welcome to my channel. In this video, I'm going to talk about cavernous sinus in detail. So from the previous video on the dural venous sinuses, we already know that cavernous sinus is a paired sinus which lies on the either side of the body of sphenoid bone in the middle cranial fossa. And it extends up to the superior orbital fissure at the apex of the orbit and also extends up to the petrous part of the temporal bone. Generally, the cavernous sinuses are 2 centimeters long and 1 centimeters wide. Internally, its internal organization shows up caverns or cave-like structures which give the trabecular structure or the meshwork of the venous channels. So in this picture, we can see the caverns which give the meshwork of the venous channels. And it also has intercavernous sinuses. So these intercavernous sinuses connect the two cavernous sinus. So here we can see the cavernous sinus present on the either side of the body of sphenoid bone, which is connected by anterior intercavernous sinus and the posterior intercavernous sinus. And beneath lies the basilar venous plexus. So it's said that we can also observe the cavernous sinus. It extends up to the apex of the orbit. So this over here we can see the cavernous sinus which extends up to the apex of the orbit. This is the lateral view of the orbit. And even in this picture we can locate the cavernous sinus on the other side connected by anterior and posterior intercavernous sinus and the basilar plexus. So as we know that the sinus is formed by the space between the two dural layers. So over here we can see this is the endosteal layer or the layer of the dura mater which is closely associated with the bone, and this is the inner meningeal layer of the dura mater, and the space formed between the two layers which is the outer endosteal and the inner meningeal gives us the sinus, and here we are talking about the cavernous sinus. So cavernous sinus lateral relation includes Meckel's cave, and Meckel's cave has a ganglion which is the trigeminal ganglion. So Meckel's cave is a dural recess in the posterior-medial portion of the middle cranial fossa, and it's important as it has the location of the trigeminal ganglion which is known as the semineural or gasserian ganglion. So in this picture we can identify Meckel's cave over here. Lateral relation of the cavernous sinus, and even in this picture we can identify the ganglion Meckel's cave. So over here this is the Meckel's cave which contains the gasserian ganglion. Superior relation of the cavernous sinus includes the optic chiasma or the point of the crossing. This is the optic chiasma. These are the cavernous sinus. So another important thing that we need to know when we go through the cavernous sinus is the course of internal carotid artery. All we know about the carotid artery is that it enters the skull base through the carotid canal and terminates as the middle and anterior cerebral arteries. So this is all we know about the carotid artery, but in this process it creates many turns and it changes its course as it goes through the carotid canal. So the first turn turns 90 degrees anterior medially within the carotid canal and runs through the petrous part of the temporal bone, and then it takes another turn which is just superior to the foramen lacerum and then groove to the body of the sphenoid bone. So over here we can see the internal carotid artery which enters the carotid canal and gives rise to the carotid groove. Forms the carotid groove, and it turns again to try and enter the carotid sinus. And it turns again to try and enter the cavernous sinus. So the carotid artery pierces the cavernous sinus and comes out of the cavernous sinus at the part which is known as anterior clinoid process. So the internal carotid artery enters the cavernous sinus nearby the foramen lacerum and passes the cavernous sinus medial to the anterior clinoid process, and it pierces the dura and arachnoid matter to enter the subarachnoid space, and from there it forms the cerebral circulation. So here we can see the course of the carotid artery entering the cavernous sinus and comes out at the region of the anterior clinoid process. It gives the carotid groove, and again it turns to try and pierce the cavernous sinus, and again comes out of the cavernous sinus through anterior clinoid process. Over here we can see the carotid artery going through the cavernous sinus. In this picture it is more clear and detailed. This is the cavernous sinus, the blue structure. This is all the cavernous sinus, and this is the course of the carotid artery that we are talking about. And from here it forms the cerebral circulation. This is the petrous part of the carotid artery, and it turns and it enters the carotid canal, pierces the cavernous sinus, turns again, which is the cavernous part of the internal carotid artery. This part is the cavernous part of the internal carotid artery, and then comes out to form the cerebral circulation, which gives the cerebral carotid artery. There's another clear picture that I've added just for clear understanding. This is all the cavernous sinus that we are talking about, and again this is the course of the carotid artery, the cavernous part of the internal carotid artery, which is present in the cavernous sinus, comes out at the anterior clinoid process. This is another clear picture where we can observe the carotid artery. So I'll choose green. This is the carotid artery entering the cavernous sinus. These are the cavernous sinus on the either side, and then comes out at the anterior clinoid process. So the cavernous sinus is also associated with the nerves, like oculomotor nerve. We can see the nerves present in the cavernous sinus. These are the oculomotor, ophthalmic, abducens, maxillary, and as we know, the trochlear nerve ganglion, which is present in the Meckel's cave. So the nerves, oculomotor, in this picture we can see the nerves, oculomotor, trochlear, abducens, ophthalmic, maxillary, present in the cavernous sinus. I've added a lot of pictures so that it helps in a better understanding, so it would be easier for you to revise and understand better. This is the third nerve, fourth, sixth, and the fifth nerves. This is the optic chiasm, the superior correlation. This is the carotid artery. This part is the carotid artery, which enters the cavernous sinus. So that was about the cavernous sinus in detail. I hope you liked this video, and I hope that this video helped you.